Hey, welcome to the Syncretism Society Virtual Academy. Today we're going to do like a Christmas special to learn the mysteries of the allegory of Santa Claus on an astrological level as well as biochemical. I'll share my screen really quick. So we have the mysteries of Santa Claus. And as we've been told, Santa Claus is the character that brings gifts down the chimney every Christmas, every year. And we're told that, this is a real occurrence, a literal occurrence. And not surprising, due to our other studies, we've confirmed that the story of Santa Claus is also an allegorical tale of the alchemical process of the internal nervous system within the human being. And we know the microcosm is the microcosm of the macrocosm. And these stories come from the fifth dimension. They come from the realm of archetypes, and they take form here in the physical realm when we write them. And these stories are written precisely about processes that happen within the human anatomy of man on our journey back to Godhead. But the stories have a spirit with them. It's almost as if they're endowed with a spirit that takes on the form and shape of the narrative that we have within the stories. For example, we have Santa Claus. So this will be an astrophysiological presentation. So in the brain, we have the putamen, and the putamen is in the part of the brain that's lateral to the claustrum. And this gland in the brain resembles the hat of Santa Claus with the ball, and it wraps around. Here's the hat. And as we're told, Santa Claus lives in the North Pole where there's snow. He's accompanied by reindeer, a sled, as well as elves that help him in his endeavors. These are all physical glands and chemical processes that take place within the brain. So the claustrum produces the holy oil. Claustrum produces the oil that's secreted and differentiated in the pineal and pituitary gland. These glands transmute that oil into milk and honey, hence the story of Moses, the land of milk and honey. So as we can see, the brain is the manufacturer of these hormones and spiritual elixirs that are part of the process of the body. So these alchemical laboratories, the pineal and pituitary gland, produce these two substances which flow down the chimney of the spine. The story of Santa Claus is a story referring to the raising of Kundalini. Santa Claus goes down the chimney, leaves gifts under the tree, and then rises back up. In some of the myths, we know that he closes one of his nostrils, and this is an indication of pranayama, alternate nostril breathing, in which we will do a small lesson in this lecture on how to initiate that process. Helps rise the energies in the Eden Pingala, hence going back up the chimney, in which he's reunited with his reindeer. So if the fluid is wasted and we destroy it by over drinking, overeating, and being ill-willed or bad-tempered, we create havoc within our physical body. Hence, when we become too heated, when we eat too much or fornicate and ejaculate the sexual fluids, when we overeat or drink alcohol, the body becomes fevered and hot. That energy or the fire at the bottom of the chimney has two meanings. On one end, it's the fire of the Kundalini that rises after Santa Claus leaves. But on another end, you're left with the lump of coal, because if the fire is still there, the fire of Satan in the lower chakra, then those fluids get burned up and expelled and wasted and are not able to rise back up into the North Pole, which is the brain. Hence, be a good boy or you'll get a lump of coal. So when we retain our fluids or gifts, we raise them back up to the brain and initiate the process of activating the 13th cranial nerve, which will give us the superior dimensions of life and access to the inner being. I'm going to read briefly from George W. Carey, in the chapter called Santa Claus. All down the ages, there have been stories of fairies, gnomes, mermaids, naiads, and fabled characters galore. Now, note these characters, the gnomes, the sylphs, the naiads, they're all true creatures. You could call Santa the king of the gnomes. And they reside in the super sensible dimensions. They're the elementals of nature. And we've been told many stories throughout the ages about these creatures, only thinking that they're myths. But the truth is, these beings work on an internal level. The ancient Norsemen, Dutch, Huns, and all the Oriental races possess literature prolific with allegories, parables, and fables built around the wonders of the physical and chemical operations of the human body. The birth of the monthly seed is the basis of the Mother Goose stories and similar tales in all lands. Santa Claus, or Saint Nicholas, the patron saint of Sapphire's virgins and children, is the bearer of gifts to children on Christmas Eve. Of all festivals celebrated all over the known world, that held in honor of Santa Claus ranks as first in the hearts of all humanity, old as well as young. This is in itself a most significant fact. It's really interesting. The story of Santa Claus is hiding the alchemical mysteries of transmutation of the human body. When I found this out, I was literally very, very shocked, and it helped ignite my awakening because I understood the story of Santa Claus. And when I understood it on an internal level, things got better. I understood more. And not only that, you still have the spirit of the story. As Jesus says, you must have the mind of a child to enter the kingdom of heaven. So we have to see it from a third dimensional chemical level, as well as a fourth and fifth dimensional, the spirit of the story of Santa Claus and the feelings and emotions it brings out, as well as the archetypes. So of all festivals celebrated all over the known world, that held in honor of Santa Claus ranks at first in the hearts of all humanity, old as well as young. This in itself is a most significant fact. It is time that the truth in regard to this age-long custom be made known to the world, time that its real and true significance be understood. Then will it be truly celebrated, for it will have become an inward process as well as an outward observation. Parents from time immemorial have explained to their children that the presents which they found in their stockings when they jumped eagerly from their beds in the morning were placed there by a mysterious person called Santa Claus. No one saw him come, no one saw him leave, but he left unmistakable evidence of his visit. Some children ask many questions in regard to this mysterious person, and when they become too insistent, the ingenuity of the parents is sorely taxed to give satisfactory answers. There comes a time, however, when they must have the Santa Claus myth explained to them, and it is then that their deep childlike trust and confidence in their parents receives its first shock. Thereafter, they can commence to doubt their parents, to question their veracity. So why don't we take this story out, chemically speaking, when we wake up in the morning, male or female, we have sexual fluids that have appeared down at the bottom chakra. We feel the urge, we feel more energy has been gifted to us. Now, it's up to us to decide what we do with those gifts. Are we going to squander them, or are we going to transmute them and transmute the elixir up the spinal column through meditative concentration, and by opening our hearts to our chastity, our love, and to overcome just bestial appetites, we can enjoy a loving relationship with a partner and not expel the gifts or the fluids, and they will hence light up the Christmas tree, which we'll be showing in the next slide. And many years, tears have been shed because, after all, Santa was not really a true person. But there is a Santa Claus. It is a physiological fact, and it does secrete the most holy and wonderful gift or substance in the body of every individual. Those who understand it, who receive it in right spirit, have become as little children. As above, so below. As in the macrocosm, the universe, so in the microcosm. Can anyone think for a minute that all the allegories and myths that have come down to us through the ages have no basic foundation? They, as well as the fast days and the feast days, are founded on great esoteric truths. Otherwise, they would have ceased to be. The great hierarchy that rules the universe sees to it that nothing is forgotten that needs to be remembered. Santa Claus or St. Claus is derived from the same root word as claustrum, from which the cloister is also derived. Claustrum means barrier, a covered place, seclusion. Cloister is referred to as a place of seclusion, and more especially as a place of seclusion for something holy, something dedicated to divinity. There is a St. Claus or claustrum within the cerebrum, and whoever gave it that name knew why they did so. The suture of the skull is the point where the bones meet. We can barely see this place on the head of the infants, as the sections are not then drawn closely together, and the vibrations of the brain can both be seen and felt. In Sanskrit, this is called the door of Brahman, for it is the aperture through which the ego or spirit leaves the body. It is also the chimney of Santa Claus. Wow. This is almost psychedelic. You know, the story of Santa Claus, the most important story to, children and mankind, is based on an astrophysiological fact that occurs monthly, but occurs more so during Christmas. And I'll explain why. So as we can see, we have the chimney. The chimney is the top of the brain, goes all the way down to the bottom where the fireplace is. The fireplace is the root chakra, the Kundalini energy. It's also symbolized by overeating, over drinking, and overindulging, keeping that flame too aroused so that the fluids burn up and become coal. And this oil that the claustrum produces is known as the oil of gladness in the Bible. And the chimney is the spine, and the gifts are the oils left at the bottom of the spine, aka the sexual energy. So the energy rises back up, leaving the gifts or coal, depending on how the energy is used. The gifts are symbolic of talents, gifts, or cities that we acquire when we rise the sexual energy up the spinal column through purity of living. We awaken our dormant faculties, such as clairvoyance, to see clearly, clairaudience, to hear the music of the spheres, or to hear the superior dimensions. We can acquire all of these different, the talents to overcome adversity, to be able to retain knowledge, to be able to access the direct truth. These are all the gifts that the Santa Claus spirit leaves in the claustrum, which descends to the bottom of the spine to be transmuted from whence they came. Coal equals kunda buffer, or negative polarity of the kundalini. When we choose to waste our energies in bestial acts, just think about someone who, overdrinks, then overeats, and then fornicates, expelling the sexual energy. The next day, that person is going to feel like horrible. And we've all been there, I've in my past, I've freaking used up the oil, and it sucks. You wake up feeling depressed. You wake up feeling lethargic. You don't feel happy. You don't feel content. So the mystery of the Santa Claus story is showing how to acquire that nervous system equilibrium, which brings about that contentment, which allows us to do our spiritual work. As you can see in this part of the brain, we have the sled. The claustrum resides here, and the sled that it rides in, as you can see, shaped like a sled, is also in the brain. And it's cool to note that the brain has white matter, North Pole. In occult anatomy, the brain is considered the North Pole. And then the white matter of the brain is the snow. And then it's very interesting how, what came first, the chicken or the egg, the story or the physiology? I mean, obviously the brain, the physiological aspects of the body were made way before the story. But the story is just so perfect and spot on. It's almost psychedelic. It's almost, and what it is it's mystical. These stories are mystical, and they come from the realm of ideals and archetypes, and that is why they manifest in the way they do. See, the elves are the neurons that produce the hormones that are secreted down the chimney, aka the pineal and pituitary glands secrete the fluids that go down to feeding the entire nervous system. and what produce all of our hormones to finally make the final product, which is the sexual energy. And what is the sexual energy? Gives you the gift of life, whether it be the gift of life in a physical kid, that you have a kid, or that energy is used to create the solar bodies, which allows you to maintain after death in an immortal body. And hence the rainbow body, or the body of light, Jesus' transfiguration, the resurrection from the cross, the immortal light body. So it's interesting to note that in the claustrum, all the cells do the same function. Hence, the elves all work together for the supreme cause. Santa Claus. The elves are in the North Pole in the brain, which is considered north in occult anatomy. This is super interesting. So there's a Santa Claus is a physiological fact, and it does secrete the most holy and wonderful gift or substance in the body. Those who understand it, who receive it in the right spirit, have become as little children, as above, so below. Thus we have Mother Nature has taken great pains to conceal this sacred center. Underneath this island, in the brain and directly in line with the optic thalamus, lies the claustrum, but separated from it by yet 3 other bodies. The claustrum is a thin sheet of isolated gray matter found just medial to the island of Rail. Santi says it is a sheet of peculiar gray substance and is made up of spindle-shaped cell bodies. It is from this claustrum that contains the yellow substance, which is outer grayish exterior, and the wonderful priceless oil is formed that flows down into the ovary facialis, descending which the rubrospinal tract through the reticular formation in the pons and medulla to the lateral column of the spinal cord. It terminates in the gray matter of the spinal cord, probably giving off collaterals to corresponding nuclei in the brain. Thus, in the Bible, it speaks of the precious gift, thou anointest my head with oil. And not only is there oil manufactured within this special laboratory of the brain, but there's actually an olive tree which bears actual olives, so named in anatomy. These 2 olives are infinitesimal eminences on either side of the medulla, with the pyramid between. This wonderful oil is the secret work of the Immaculate Virgin Mary, or Mare, represented by the sign Virgo. In chemistry, we find that sulfate of potassium is the mineral salt which, uniting with sulfur and oxygen, manufactures the oil. We find that this salt also crystallizes out of the mother liquors of the seawater and salt springs. Santa Claus brings his gifts when the Christmas is celebrated. The Greek character that stands for Christ, or XPI, and the word itself, Christ, means oil in Greek. The seed is the bread of life, and when anointed with oil, becomes the Christmas, the bread eaten in the Father's kingdom. Thus, we clearly understand the meaning of Santa Claus and his Christmas visits with gifts to the children. This completely destroys all the confusion about whether we should be, even participating in Santa Claus, or is it Jesus's birthday? Well, it just so happens, I saw this funny joke. It's like Santa Claus is the father of Jesus. It's the same thing. It's the same story in a different term, in a different age. The redeeming factor, or Santa Claus, which leaves the gift, the pearl of wisdom within our solar plexus, rises down through the sexual energy to the bottom of the chimney and rises back up. The sled and reindeer is the astral projection and shamanic dreaming that occurs when this process takes place. Because of the DMT and the heightened state of consciousness, you're able to actually see into the supersensible planes of existence. As you can see, the flying reindeer as a symbol of the soul's flight in the astral dimensions, because with accumulated sexual energy brings more energy to help wake up in the astral plane. The reindeer are none other than the 7 chakras, the 7 planets. And Santa leaves the holy fluid for the gifts when rising back up, produce the DMT-like effects. So this allows us to see into this interdimensional story that takes place as above, so below. The Christmas tree is none other than the tree of life, the Kabbalah. And the tree of life is a map of the universe that God created, as well as man. As we can see, man is the head, the shoulders, and here the sacrum. Santa Claus leaves the gifts down here at the sacrum chakra, or the Kabbalistic tree, in order for it to be transmuted up to this higher crown Sephiroth, or the North Pole. And the fruit, or the Sephiroth of the tree of life, are the lights on the tree, but they're also the chakra system, the nervous system. When this fluid, this fire ignites the nervous system and increases the vitality, the nervous system is lit up like a tree with the phosphoric luminous light that the transmuted sexual energy distributes throughout the nervous system when it rises back up into the brain and produces that entire regeneration of the blood and reactivation of the gifts and talents. So the candy cane and the shepherd's staff are all about Kundalini yoga. And as you can see, the shepherd's crook goes up the back of the spine and stops here at the cave of Brahman, in the occult anatomy of man, Manly P. Halls. And Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita, all say, rest your gaze between your eyes, tongue at the roof of the mouth, breathing, pot belly breathing. We know Santa Claus has a pot belly. So we breathe in, we poke our belly out, and we breathe out, we breathe it in. And we breathe in, we picture the energy or white light going up and around the head and down into here, the nose. If you're first beginning, it's good to practice this for a good 10 minutes a day, at least 10 to 30 minutes. I'm practicing pranayama to get the significant effects. See, you can't raise Kundalini by pranayama alone, but sometimes you can help get a spark of some of the sexual energy to light up the nervous system and experience an epiphany or a vision. But essentially, the best way to rise Kundalini is through chastity with a partner, sex without orgasm, essentially rising the energy or the fire up into the brain. So the cane is the energy pathway, the energy coiled at the bottom of the spine and meets between the eyebrows. That's why the crook. See all these little manifestations. We see Jesus with the shepherd's staff, and we think, oh, he's just, he's the Lamb of God. He's the shepherd. He's the sheep herder. We understand these allegories mean so much more. The shepherd's crook or the candy cane is the spinal column. It's the shepherd of the lambs because the cerebrum is the Lamb of God. Krishna's the cow herder because of the cerebellum, the Taurus. And these two animals are the king in the kingdom of heaven, or the God brain. Hence, this is where it meets. That energy rises up and meets here. And practice that I'll give you is that you focus the energy here in the third eye meditation for 20 minutes a day in a dark room while operating pranayama, alternate nostril breathing. So I'll teach that now. You'll plug your right nostril with your right thumb, and you'll breathe in through this left nostril for a count of 8 seconds. No, 4 seconds, sorry. Now you're going to close both and hold for 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Obviously, you wouldn't be counting out loud. Now release for 4 on the right nostril. Close, hold out for 8. In 4, hold for 8. Out 4, hold out for 8. In 4, left nostril, hold for 8. So you'd want to set a timer and do that for at least 20 minutes a day to start the ascent of the energy, and to also know that it's not very wise to practice this unless you have a good amount of sexual energy accumulated. Just some advice of Ramakrishna's wife, she says, don't do the breathing exercises if you're not having a lot of chastity, because, that could actually create disturbances in the nervous system. So you want to make sure you're working with the gifts that Santa left you in order to breathe them back up the spinal column. So as we can see, Santa Claus is a representation of the alchemical physiological transmutation of the human body or vessel into the fifth element, or the ether of the soul, the splendid child, the birth of the Christ within. And the Mysteries of Santa Claus is a great syncretic symbolical story that helps merge Christianity and the Kundalini science of the Indus Valley. Here's a picture. Santa Claus was always depicted as riding on a goat. Well, because December 25th is Capricorn, Santa depicted as riding a goat, old man Kronos with the white beard, Father Time. Mythical Santa Claus appears between Sagittarius and the goat in the same way Christ is born in a stable or a manger, which is also, both in between Capricorn and Sagittarius. And Saturn is old man Kronos, the Ancient of Days, which resides Kabbalistically in Kether on the Tree of Life. If we go here at the top of the Tree of Life, we can see the crown. This is where this is the Ancient of Days, Kether. You have Kether Chokmah Bana, we have the Christ, and then we have Saturn, of course. So we know that the old man, Ancient of Days, resist up in here. And in the ancient Kabbalistic tradition, it is metaphorically said that God does have a form, McGregor Mathers said a Kabbalah Unveiled. He described it, the white beard and the white locks, the lamb wool, the huge beard, the old man with the perfect nose, perfect features. It is none other than the Ancient of Days, which is the one who emanated the Christ, the Son of God. So all of this is anagogical. It happens before creation even takes place here on the physical realm. And there's two creations. There's a spiritual, and then there's the physical. And then we have the eternal realm above the crown, which is the Ein Sof. Hence, Santa Claus lives in the North Pole. It's a beautiful story, Kabbalistic. Finally, we have sacrum, or the devil. Notice how the bottom of the spine looks like the devil, or the Grinch. The Grinch that stole Christmas resides in the bottom of the spine. So very interesting. And Santa Claus is can be depicted as the master alchemist, the hermit, the wizard, the one that transmutes the four elements of the sexual energy and is masterful over this dimension and able to acquire the light body, or to be able to take flight through the reindeer. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this presentation on Santa Claus, and I'm looking forward to seeing you guys at the next lesson. Thanks.